3 weeks later, when his attorney called and asked if I was willing to be reasonable, I didn't hesitate. I already am, I said. My name is Claire. I'm 31. I was a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was good at my job, not in a modest, self-deprecating way but truly good. I saw patterns where others saw noise. I understood risk, timing, the quiet logic behind market chaos. My manager used to joke that I had a sixth sense for trouble. He wasn't wrong. I just didn't use it soon enough in my personal life. I met Daniel's father, Richard, at a company conference in Raleigh. I'm using his real name because I stopped protecting it a long time ago. He was 53, confident in the way men are when no one has ever told them no. He founded the firm I worked for, though he'd stepped back from daily operations. He came in occasionally, traveled often, and collected things: art, property, influence, and people. He could be charming when he wanted to be. I wasn't naive. I was 30. I knew exactly what a man like Richard offered, and what he didn't. What I didn't calculate was what it would cost me once I became inconvenient. We were involved, loosely undefined, for about 8 months. He never introduced me to his family. I told myself that was fine. We weren't serious. He said his second divorce had been finalized the year before. I didn't ask for proof. I should have. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in October. I sat in my car in the office parking garage for 22 minutes before I could move. I didn't cry. I never do when I'm in shock. I go still. Quiet. I calculate. By the time I stepped into the elevator, I had already made my decision. I was keeping the baby. That evening I drove to Richard's house, a renovated colonial in a gated neighborhood where everything looked too perfect, too controlled. I sat across from him at his kitchen island and told him directly. I wasn't asking for anything. I was informing him. I thought he deserved to know. He was silent for a long time. Then he said carefully, "That's not a good situation, Claire." "Not, are you okay?" "Not, what do you need?" "Just an evaluation, like a disappointing quarterly report." "I know," I said. "We should talk about options." "I've considered them," I added. "I'm keeping it." He nodded slowly, like he was processing numbers. Then he poured himself a glass of water and said he needed time to think. I drove home. That was the last real conversation we ever had. He didn't call the next day, or the day after. A week passed. I kept going to work. I did my job. And in the quiet moments I started researching family law attorneys. Not because I had a plan yet, but because I believe in knowing the terrain before you need to cross it. That same instinct again. His mother called the following Thursday. I didn't even know he'd told her. I didn't realize until that moment how involved his family was in managing what they considered his complications. Her name was Margaret. 71 years old. Her voice was polished, controlled, the kind of politeness that feels like pressure. She said she understood I was in a delicate situation. She said she wanted to help. Then she offered me $1.8 million. I remember exactly where I was, standing in my kitchen, leftover pasta still on the stove, my phone warm against my ear. "In exchange for what?" I asked. "A clean separation," she said smoothly. "We would handle medical costs, relocation, anything you need. There would, of course, be an agreement. Confidentiality. Non-disparagement." "And I waive any claims?" I asked. "Yes." I let that sit for a moment. "You mean," I said carefully, "I give up my child's right to know who their father is?" Pause. "We prefer to think of it as protecting everyone's interests." "Whose interests?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Claire," she said, my name sounding like a problem she intended to solve. "Richard has a great deal at stake right now. He's in the middle of a significant transaction. Investors, partners, people who expect stability. This situation would be disruptive." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because, in that moment, I understood exactly what I was to her. A liability. A risk. A line item to be managed. "I understand," I said. She sounded relieved. "Good. Then you'll consider." "I understand what you're asking," I interrupted. "I'll be in touch." Then I hung up. I opened my laptop, went to the folder I had already started, and documented everything: date, time, summary. And the recording. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I had looked that up 6 days earlier. The next morning I called my attorney, Margaret Ellison. No relation, just a coincidence I appreciated more than I expected. She'd been practicing family law in Charlotte for nearly 20 years. Small, precise, and sharp in a way that didn't require volume. I sat in her office and laid everything out. The relationship, the pregnancy, the call. Then I played the recording. When it ended, she looked at me over her glasses. "Have they contacted you again?" "Not yet." "They will," she said. "And when they do, you'll tell them you need more time." "Okay. Because by then," she added calmly, "we'll already have filed." I know what some people would think. That $1.8 million is life-changing money. That I should have taken it. And I'll be honest, I thought about it. For about 4 hours that night I weighed every angle. But I kept coming back to one thing. That money wasn't for me. It wasn't even for my child. It was for them. To erase a problem. And the moment I signed that agreement, I would be agreeing that my child was a problem. That his existence could be negotiated away. That paternity, legal, documented, real, was optional for men with enough money. I couldn't do it. Not for $1.8 million. Not for 5. So that Friday morning, Margaret filed the paternity petition and the child support claim. Fast. Before they could move. Before they could build walls. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it because my child deserved the truth. On record, in law, undeniable. And for the first time since that phone call, the balance of power shifted. Margaret moved quickly. We filed first. Before Richard's family could organize their legal team. Before they could request delays or try to shield him behind paperwork and strategy. There was no time for them to build a wall. And I want to be clear, I wasn't doing this for revenge. I filed because my child deserved the truth. A name. A legal father. Support that reflected reality, not convenience. That same afternoon, a process server walked into the lobby of Richard's office building with the papers. When I heard, I thought about his assistant. The young woman who always greeted me politely when I visited. I hoped she wasn't the one asked to deliver the envelope. I hoped it was handed directly to him. Preferably in front of someone whose opinion mattered. His attorney called Margaret within 2 hours. She told me that evening. "It wasn't a friendly conversation," she said. Of course it wasn't. He was claiming the relationship had been casual. That paternity was uncertain. That a DNA test would be necessary. "We'll welcome that," I said. Margaret gave a small, satisfied nod. "We already have one step ahead," she replied. "And here's something they didn't count on. North Carolina allows prenatal paternity testing. We're filing for it." I blinked. "Before the baby's born?" "Yes," she said. "They assumed you didn't know that. They assumed wrong." Over the next 6 weeks, Richard's legal team tried everything. First, they argued our relationship had been casual, as if that changed anything. It didn't. The court wasn't interested in feelings. It cared about biology and responsibility. Then they tried something subtler. They suggested I had known about Richard's complicated situation and moved forward anyway. Hinting, without saying it outright, that I had planned the pregnancy. Margaret shut that down quickly. She submitted financial records, messages, and a detailed timeline that made their argument collapse under its own weight. Then came another offer. This time, $2.4 million. Margaret forwarded it to me with just 2 words. "Your call." I declined. The prenatal DNA results came back in early December. 99.9%. I sat in my car again, just like the day I found out I was pregnant. But this time I let myself feel it. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Something quieter. Final. A door closing. A truth becoming permanent. After that, Richard's attorney stopped disputing paternity. What came next was something I hadn't fully expected, even though Margaret had warned me. In high-income cases, child support isn't simple. There are guidelines, yes. But once income goes beyond a certain level, judges have discretion. And Richard's disclosed income? That word mattered. Because what he reported, and what Margaret's forensic accountant uncovered, were very different numbers. The real figure was substantial. "This isn't symbolic," Margaret told me during one meeting. "Support in cases like this is meant to match the child's standard of living to the parent's actual means." I thought back to his mother's words. Stability. Investors. Reputation. She had treated this like a negotiation. Like the strongest side would win. But she misunderstood something fundamental. A courtroom isn't a boardroom. Power doesn't stay where it started. A woman with documentation, a strong case, and the right attorney stands on equal ground. The hearing was in February. I was 7 months pregnant. I wore a navy blazer I'd owned long before any of this began. I didn't want something new. I wanted to walk in exactly as I was, before they ever tried to make me smaller. Richard was there. I hadn't seen him in 4 months. He looked older. Or maybe I just saw him clearly now. He sat beside his attorney. And he never once looked at me. 3 weeks later, when his attorney called and asked if I was willing to be reasonable, I told him without hesitation that I already had been. My name is Claire. I'm 31 and until recently, I worked as a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm in Charlotte. And I was good at it, truly good. Not in the polite, modest way people say it, but in the real sense. I understood patterns, risk, the quiet structure beneath financial chaos. My manager used to joke that I could sense problems before they appeared. He wasn't wrong. I just didn't apply that instinct to my personal life soon enough. I met Richard, Daniel's father, at a company conference in Raleigh. He was 53, confident in the way men are when they've never been told no. He founded the firm I worked for, though by then he'd stepped back from daily operations. He showed up occasionally, traveled often, and collected things: art, properties, influence, and people. I knew what kind of man he was. I wasn't naive. I understood what he could offer, and what he couldn't. What I didn't calculate was the cost of becoming inconvenient to someone like him. We were involved for about 8 months. Nothing official, nothing defined. He never introduced me to his family, and I told myself that was fine. He said his divorce had been finalized the year before. I didn't verify it. I should have. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in October. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 22 minutes before I could move. I didn't cry. I don't cry when I'm in shock, I go quiet. So, I think, I calculate, I understand. By the time I stepped into the elevator, I had already made my decision. I was keeping the baby. I went to Richard's house that evening. A pristine, renovated place in a gated neighborhood where everything looked curated, even the silence. I sat across from him at his kitchen island and told him directly. I wasn't asking for anything. I was informing him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That's not a good situation, Claire." "Not, are you okay?" "Not, what do you need?" "Just an assessment. Like a bad quarterly report." "I know," I said. "And I've already thought it through. I'm keeping it." He nodded slowly like he was processing numbers. Then he poured himself a glass of water and said he needed time to think. That was the last real conversation we ever had. He didn't call the next day. Or the day after that. A week passed. I kept working. I did my job. And in my spare time I started researching family law attorneys. Not because I had a plan yet, but because I believe in understanding the terrain before stepping into it. That instinct again. Then his mother called. I didn't know he'd told her. I didn't know how involved his family was until that moment. Her name was Margaret. She was 71, polished, controlled, and used to being obeyed. Her voice was calm in a way that wasn't kindness. It was strategy. She said she understood I was in a delicate situation. She said she wanted to help. Then she offered me $1.8 million. I remember exactly where I was, standing in my kitchen, leftover pasta on the stove, my phone warm in my hand. In exchange for what? I asked. A clean separation, she said. We'll handle everything. Medical expenses, relocation, a fresh start if you prefer. There would be an agreement, of course. Confidentiality, non-disparagement. And I give up any claims? I asked. Yes. I let that sit for a moment. You mean, I said carefully, I give up my child's right to know who their father is. Pause. We prefer to think of it as protecting everyone's interests. Whose interests? I asked. Another pause, longer this time. Claire, she said like my name was a complication, Richard has a great deal at stake. He's in the middle of a major transaction. Investors, partners, stability matters. A situation like this would be very disruptive. And that's when I understood. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a risk. A line item. A liability to manage. I understand, I said. She sounded relieved. Good. Then you'll consider. I understand what you're asking, I interrupted. I'll be in touch. Then I hung up. I opened my laptop, went to the folder I had already started, and documented everything. The date, the time, the details of the call. As I had recorded it. I'd looked up the law 6 days earlier. One-party consent. Then I called my attorney. Margaret Ellison. She wasn't connected to them. Just a coincidence in names I found quietly satisfying. She'd practiced family law in Charlotte for nearly 2 decades. Calm, precise, and absolutely relentless in the way the best attorneys are. I sat in her office and told her everything. The relationship. The pregnancy. The call. Then I played the recording. When it ended, she looked at me over her glasses. Have they contacted you again? She asked. Not yet. They will, she said. And when they do, you'll tell them you need more time. Okay. Because by then, she added calmly, we'll already be filed. I know what some people would think. That $1.8 million is a lot of money. That I should have taken it. And I did think about it, for a few hours that night. I waited seriously. But I kept coming back to one thing. That money wasn't for me. It wasn't even for my child. It was for them. It was the price of making their problem disappear. And the moment I signed, I'd be agreeing that my child was a problem. That his existence could be erased with enough money. I couldn't do that. Not for $1.8 million. Not for 5. So the next morning Margaret filed. Fast. Before they could react. Before they could build a wall around him. Before they could try to control the narrative. I wasn't filing for revenge. I was filing because my child deserved the truth. On record, in law, undeniable. That same afternoon, a process server walked into Richard's office building and handed him the papers. And for the first time, he had no control over what happened next. I do have people who love me. My sister is there. My friends showed up for me in ways I didn't expect. But there's a certain kind of loneliness that comes with making a decision everyone has an opinion about. That part you carry alone. People had something to say about everything. About me going to court. About why I didn't just take the money. About whether I was foolish for getting involved with Richard in the first place. By the 3rd month I stopped listening. Because here's what I learned on the other side of all this. The law isn't built to favor people like me. It isn't designed to protect single mothers or people without power. But it also isn't built to favor someone just because they have more money. And when you find the right lawyer, when you document everything, when you act early and do things properly, the law becomes the most powerful equalizer in the room. Not money. Not connections. Not influence. The law. Sometimes, late at night when Daniel is asleep and everything is quiet, I think about how close I came to signing that agreement. I think about how many women do sign, because they're scared, exhausted, or don't know they have another choice. Sometimes all it takes is a few seconds of resolve. Just enough to say, I'll be in touch, and hang up. You don't have to be fearless. I wasn't. I was scared every single day. But moving forward while you're scared, that's what matters. That's the whole thing. Daniel is 11 months old now. He's starting to pull himself up on the coffee table, looking around like the world is something unbelievable. Sometimes I watch him and think about how different things could have been. If I had taken the money. If I had walked away. If I had given him a story with a missing piece. A silence where the truth should be. I'm glad I didn't. His story is simple. His mother stood in a courtroom and said clearly and on record, this child is real. He matters. And no amount of money changes that. That's the story I'll tell him when he's old enough. And it's the one I'm telling you now. If you're in a situation like this, if someone tries to convince you that your silence has a price, that your life can be bought, that you're a problem money can erase, remember this. Document everything. Find a lawyer who believes you. Learn your rights. Because the moment you walk into a courtroom and file, you change everything. They are not more powerful than the law. They just want you to believe they are.